You're listening to the Religion Unplugged podcast. I'm Matthew Peterson, editor of the show. Many of the most enduring displays of human artistic greatness have been, in some way, religious. The Egyptian pyramids were constructed in order to accommodate the needs of a king's soul after his death. The oldest architectural structures still standing today are almost exclusively temples, and archaeologists hypothesize that many ancient cave paintings depict religious scenes and images. And as history progressed, towering cathedrals, opulent mosques, and brilliantly ornate Hindu temples were erected and maintained for centuries. Worshipful hymns and poems abound in nearly all religious communities. Sacred texts are transcribed with careful calligraphy and detailed illustrations. Elaborate dances celebrate the supernatural, and massive marble statues are carefully carved to depict the holiest beings. The beautiful things that humans have made throughout time have most often been made for a deity. But in a secularized world, the purpose of art is much more varied. Today, art is most often defined as creative self-expression. There has been a clear shift from creating for a higher power to creating for the rest of humanity. But has the absence of spiritual motivation made art worse? Or has the decision to tell human stories for a human audience made excellence more attainable? Actor, director, and producer David Henry is interested in this question. It's one of the reasons he recently took a trip to Italy. This trip was filmed and is now available as a 6-episode documentary series called Seeking Beauty, in which David engages with some of the most sacred Italian churches and artwork and seeks to understand the motivations and beliefs of the artists who created them. Religion Unplugged's culture critic Joseph Holmes interviewed David to understand his own faith journey and what he learned from centuries of Italian Catholicism. Here's Joseph and David.
Welcome, everyone, to the Religion Unplugged podcast, your one-stop shop for all the best religious news and culture. I am Joseph Holmes, film and culture critic for Religion Unplugged, and today is one of my very surreal days on the show because I get to talk to somebody that I admittedly definitely watched in my Disney Channel days. He is, let me pull up the bio so I don't miss anything. He is co-founder and CEO of Novo Inspire Studios. He's an industry veteran with over 20 years of experience as an actor, director, writer, and producer, including over 200 television episodes with franchise hits such as the Emmy Award-winning shows of Wizards of Waverly Place with Selena Gomez and How I Met Your Mother. You created, wrote, and produced the Netflix number 3 worldwide kids and family animation show A Dark Tale and Grimm, which was also nominated for an Emmy. This is David Henry. David, welcome to the show.
What an intro, bro. Thank you.
Of course. If there's one thing I can do, it can be a hype man for my guests, particularly when I talk to them. And we're talking to you about today because you have a new project, Seeking Beauty, which is a docu-series. Tell us about that. What is that about for people who haven't heard of it, and what inspired you to make it?
Yeah, I've never done anything unscripted. Everything I've done is scripted, right? We have a very defined path of what we're doing. There's a script. So this is intriguing to me because it's unscripted. I was like, why do you guys want me for this? And the format, I think, is what pushed it over the line and made it something that I had to do. I love that they wanted to do a show that explores beauty and culture and its relation and to really dive deeper. My wife and I are big fans of travel shows. We grab a glass of wine, we watch travel shows. It's fun for us. So I was like, okay, this is kind of close to home with my wife and I, but the format is what hit it home for me. They pitched me on, okay, we want to drop an average guy into a scenario where he's able to really ask bigger questions and explore. He's going to search. He's going to be the eyes through which the audience is searching. And I was like, oh, perfect. So this isn't what you expect. It's not an expert giving you a dissertation on the theology of beauty or anything like that. It's the opposite. It's just a normal guy getting dropped into a scenario just like you and asking the questions maybe you'd ask in those scenarios, wanting to understand why these old things are still so new and so relevant. So that really pushed it over the line for me, and I had a blast. We got to go all over Italy and ask the bigger questions and explore. So what you might be used to when you're seeing a show that's just about food, it's that we have food, but it covers more art, architecture, poetry, music, food, wine, and ask bigger questions around those topics.
Yeah, what was really interesting to me certainly is it's a show, each episode you go to a different place and you find some place that's historic, like a cathedral or a monastery or something like that. That's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. And of course, first season it's in Italy, and you have just are talking with the experts there about like, why is this, old historic thing very beautiful? And you very also specifically talk, there's two things that are interesting. You talk specifically about faith elements, like you go to a monastery, you go to cathedrals. And you're also talking about things are beautiful and that they're old. And I think it's interesting because there's a lot of conversations right now, obviously, about faith and about heritage and things like that. There seems to be a lot of a interest in what are things about our culture that's beautiful that have come before us. What do we stand on it? Again, we're always kind of into the new as Americans. We really like new things. We like to see what's next, where we go, what's the future going to look like. But there seems to be kind of a trend now to kind of stop and look backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about kind of what that was like on the show. Have you sensed that kind of conversation happening, and what was interesting about that?
Hugely. I mean, we're the most plugged in generation the world has ever seen. And I think we're experiencing the fruits of that. Our Lord said, a tree by its fruits, and the fruit's bad. Attention spans are at an all-time low. Anxiety is at an all-time high. Mental illness is at an all-time high. So it's like, yeah, I think we're going, you know what? We're experiencing the fruits of a secularized culture, and something's off. So naturally, people are going, well, let's look back. And this show is a part of that movement. And it's beautiful because I think as Christians, your goal is to obviously live Christ-like. And if you've ever played a game of telephone, you know that 10 people in, the story is very different than where it started, right? And so what was really impressive to me was getting to go back in time and learn about the faith of the people at the time. As a student of Christianity and Christian history, we're closer to the source. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, how did they articulate their faith physically? Because, you know an artist by his art. So how did they articulate their faith? And it's like, well, it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. None of it was cost effective. They would start building things and they wouldn't even have the technology to complete it. They knew it would be 100 years till we'd have the technology that could hold the weight of this dome that we're trying to put on top of this cathedral. But they had enough faith to where they were like, we'll figure it out. I don't know. Maybe my great grandkids will figure it out. I hope they do, because we're laying the foundation now and we're spending an insane amount of money to do it. But that's the kind of faith of the people at the time. They did things purely to give glory and honor to God, and by doing so, helping the common good.
Yeah.
And, that mentality is not cost effective. And that's why we're not producing things in America like they did back then, because we're driven by different incentives. So it was just so fascinating for me to see how important beauty was to the old mind. And also, too, you have to know that back then, they didn't have lives like we do, where I have my air conditioning on and we're Zooming from across the world and with phones and TVs and books. Their life wasn't, it was a harder life. I was tempted to say darker, but that might not be true, but it was a harder life than what we have. It wasn't as pretty, certainly, than the common person's apartment. But they had their cathedrals, they had their churches, they had the ways their towns were designed, and that was for human flourishing. And you still see those old things bearing fruit. You still see human flourishing. You still see people flocking to these places. And what do we have here? Every 20, 30 years, we knock down, we rebuild, we remodel, we redo. And it's not like that there. It's not like that. They built with an everlasting mentality because they believed that God was everlasting.
Yeah. So what are some of the examples of things that maybe most surprised you that you saw?
It was the faith of the people. I remember I was on top of the Duomo in Milan. And nowadays, the tops of these cathedrals are tourist attractions. You can get up there and walk around. There's things like Elevator and others that allow us to do this. Back then, it wasn't the case. And I'm up there, I'm walking around, and I turned to our guide and I said, I see a statue over there that's really detailed. Like, I can see the veins in the arms of the statue. Like, why is it here? Like, This is hundreds of feet off the ground. You can't see it from the ground floor. You can't see it from inside the cathedral. Whoever built this surely would have thought no one will ever see this. Why is it like thrown up here? It makes no sense. And the guide was like, well, David, the architects knew that certain things were just for God. And I was like, whoa, okay, got it. Copy that. Yeah. These people really believed. They really believed. And I found that common with many of the places that I visited. You know, there'd be hundreds of feet off the ground that I was on scaffolding and I could get up close and see the detail. And I'm like, you can't even see this from down there. Why? And they'd be like, well, because the architects did things just for God. That was a part of the deal, that they need to please God here. That was really, those types of stories were very impressive to me because, I don't have that kind of faith. You know, if you were to tell me like, go make a movie and like stick it in the closet forever, I'd be like, no, like even if it's just for God, like I don't, you know, that's a tall order. But that's how they did it. You know, that's how they did it.
Yeah, I was a quote from Robert Eggers, who did obviously Nosferatu, and he did Northman and Witch, and he said that one of the things that he feels depressed about in being an artist today is that you can make art for two reasons. You can make it to make money, or you can make it for your own ego. And he envies the medieval era artists because they believed that they were making art for God explicitly, and that gave a higher calling to it.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to quote that. Thanks for telling me that. I'm going to quote that.
Absolutely. It was one of the most amazing things. I was like, you know, I mean, to me as a Christian, I was like, good news. You can do that today if you want to.
You just got to go get a little water on the forehead and you're ready to go, buddy. Exactly, like, yeah.
Exactly. Whatever flavor. We've got a bunch of denominations, whatever flavor you want.
Yeah. That's funny.
But there been some people, I forget, and if this is a quote somebody said, and I forget what it is, but that we often want the beauty of the things of the past without the beliefs of the people who made them.
Exactly. And that's what, you know, and you can't divorce them. Yeah. You just can't. It's like taking the gas out of a car. It doesn't run, it's dead. And, that was really inspiring to me because a lot of these travel shows, they do exactly what you just said. They take the faith out and they just look at the pretty images. And it's like, no, that's just poor history. Like it's disingenuous to not give the full picture of and ask the bigger questions. So for me, I feel like this show really tries to restore the heritage of these places in the truest, the fullest sense.
That's amazing. So obviously, you know, growing up as a Christian back in the age that you were doing the Wizards of Waverly Place show, there is always this thing where we would do is like, is that you know, actor a Christian? You know, we really like that actor. Are they a Christian? And you know, and always coming out later that it's like, oh, this one wasn't. So it's kind of fun to find out that you are. But I'm wondering kind of about your faith background and upbringing, because obviously this is one of the first projects where you've kind of gotten to make that front and center because of the topic of the show. You get to talk very honestly about it, and it's unscripted. So I was wondering a bit about your faith background. What was like a snapshot, at least, of what your journey was like? You know, did you grow up as a believer? What was that journey like to where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say a lot of my life, I had no belief from the time I was probably, 12 until 22. There was really nothing there. I was just a kid in Hollywood doing his thing, working, making money, thought I was cool. And I was very far from the purpose of things. And then I had some encounters. I had some really wonderful encounters with great men who witnessed to me and were able to answer the bigger questions that I had. The more success and fame that I got, the more of an existential crisis I entered, because I saw that pleasure is not an end, although I was living for it and I was exhausting it. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. Like this isn't making me happy. And this is what I've been told I do for the rest of my life. Like I'm barely old enough to drink, and I see where this is going, and I really don't like it. I really don't. This is not going to do it for me. This will not give me a sustaining happiness. And it threw me into this existential crisis. I mean, I was really spinning in my mind going, what? I need something, and honor, respect, stuff just wasn't going to do it. Oh no. And it led me to studying different philosophies, theologies, religions, messed with Buddhism for a little bit. There's a lot of good natural stuff.
Always a popular one.
Oh, it's a popular one. Yep. Very popular, especially, I'm 36 now, especially my early 20s. That was cool. And then I met these wonderful Christian men who were able to answer the bigger questions that I had and talk philosophy and theology and really go deep. And that changed my life. To make a long story short, I found my faith. I'm Catholic. And I did my first big confession when I was like 21 or 22, a general confession, and got everything off my soul. And came into the faith. I technically was baptized. I'm Italian, so sure. I technically was baptized. But we went to church like maybe on Christmas and Easter, but that was pretty much. Sure, that's pretty much it.
I grew up Episcopalian, so I know all about that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That old thing. And, but no, by the grace of God, I'm 36, been married 8 going on 9 years. We have 3 kids and one on the way. And, so thanks be to God. It's all taken. He didn't give up on me.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So now this is interesting because, again, you talk about your life, as an artist, being in Hollywood, making money, being a, hit star, and then going through that kind of classic story of like, well, is this all there is? And now you're making art again, but you kind of are coming at this from this other perspective. How has that changed kind of the way that you make your art? Because you're now directing some, things. Yeah. And the stories you want to tell. How has that shaped the kind of stories you want to tell, the way you want to pursue your art?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like that quote that you just gave me. Who's from Robert Eggers? It's from Robert Eggers. Yeah, it's kind of like that experience, except I lived through what he's envying.
Yes.
Now there's purpose. Now there's calling. Now there's responsibility. I used to always say, man, it stinks that I'm so lucky. So many people haven't been put in my shoes and my situation and my circumstance. And I work hard. I work really hard, but just where I've been born into is luck. It's pure luck. This chaos and luck. And, my coming to my faith has made me realize, no, it's the opposite. It's like God gives us all a place in life and he calls us all to the same end, ultimately in our own ways. And he wants us to be great in how we do that. And so for me, I went, oh, okay. I have to use what I've been given, like the parable of the master and the talents. I have to use what I've been given to try to give our Lord a return. And man, I'm going to go out swinging. So for me, I'm like, how do I take where I am and use the circumstances of my life to try to make things that can entertain and elevate the culture? And at times that's things that have explicit mentions of faith, like seeking beauty, but most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's just good stories that deal with classic themes.
Yeah. So for somebody who is either, feeling like they're entrapped in kind of that meaninglessness phase and being like, hey, whether it's the first group of people we sort of talked about at the beginning of the world, where it's like everything is new and changing and I don't feel satisfied, I'm looking for something older, or somebody who is, what you just described is like, I'm trying to work for myself or other things that are not satisfying. What would you advise people who are looking for beauty that other people have made and want to make things beautiful themselves? What would the advice be that you would give them?
Yeah. If you're an artist out there, and I think there's a notion, and you hit on this a bit with Robert Eggers, there's this popular notion that art is just self-expression. Mm-hmm. And I would challenge you to challenge that and explore that and look at the history of artists. And then come back to me. But I would challenge that, because it's like, well, if art is just self-expression, to me, that's such a thin explanation for what art is. Art is something that can change worlds. It can change cultures. I mean, there's pieces of art that have literally like stopped wars and changed the tides of time. Art is something so powerful that it can really move hearts in a way that teaching can't. Yes, art is self-expression. Yes, you need to express yourself as an artist. You need to feel good in what you're doing, but also realize that you have a responsibility, because what you're showing is going to have an impact on the people. And if your mentality is, I couldn't care less what people think, I'm just going to do my thing and show it to them, well, that in itself is a philosophy you're forcing on people. So without realizing it, you're still preaching. So it's like, well, just realize it and then go, where do I stand on things, and what do I believe in? Who am I? So yeah, I really do think that we need to challenge the very philosophy artists operate under. And then also, I think to layer on top of that, it's like, well, what is beauty? What is beauty? Is the people who are taking a piece of poop and putting it in a can and putting it in the center of the art museum and calling it art, is that beauty? If it's not, if you feel like there's something wrong there, well, then what does that say? What does that mean? Why? Dive into that, because I think we've been, the past 30 years especially, we've been forced this subjective notion that art is purely subjective, that there's no objective elements to it. And I think you're seeing pushback on that now as well. So yeah, we're in an exciting time. I think the headwinds are changing, and I think now more than ever is a time for the rebirth of the classical artist.
That's fantastic. So, two things. One, what is it ultimately that you hope people get out of Seeking Beauty? And if people are excited by this conversation, I don't know why they wouldn't, to see Seeking Beauty, where can they go to watch it?
Great question. I hope that people will want to visit these old places. So I hope they'll see the show and they'll go, man, I want to go see these old places. And I know it's expensive, but it's cheaper than going on your typical vacation to, I don't know, an amusement park or something. You can save up. It might not be now, it might not be next year, but put away a few coffees a month, a few Starbuckses, and you might find yourself having enough money to get there and take it in. And then two, I hope that they watch the show and they're curious about beauty and they want to invite it into their own soul. Because at the end of the day, it's not about aesthetics. It's about what the aesthetics do to you. And the aesthetics matter. They definitely matter. But the impact matters more on your own soul. So I hope people invite it into their lives, invite beauty into their lives. And you can watch it for free. There's a new streaming platform. It's called EWTN. You can download the app and watch it for free. You can type it in your browser and watch it for free. You can watch it on your TV screen on, what's it on? I think it's on Vudu. So yeah, there's ways you can check it out, but it's all free. Let us know what you think, and we'd love your thoughts.
That's amazing. Well, thanks so much, David. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And thank you, everyone, for listening to us. And remember, this is Religion Unplugged, your one-stop shop for all the best religious news and culture.